This week on The Grit Crusade.
Subscribe. So understand that it's almost symbolic what I'm saying.
I like it.
Because if you can't share money for a certain reason, really look at why and make sure that's okay. And if it is, great.
Welcome, Grit Crusaders, to the Grit Crusade podcast. I am your host, Brooke Black, and I'm so excited to be here today with a guest. Yay! It's been a few weeks since we've had a guest, since we've been doing co-host mini-series, and my guest today is Bonnie Robertson.
Hello.
Yay! Now, Bonnie is an old CrossFit friend of mine, but most importantly, she just published her first book.
Yes.
Yay! And it's on Amazon. And we'll drop the links in here. And so we're going to get to hear the whole story today about her journey, not only of publishing a book, but what she really does for a living is being a badass divorce lawyer, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. All right. Well, we're so glad to have you here today. For those of you that are listening on your favorite podcast streaming platform, be sure you follow us so that way you can see the episodes every week. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and click that subscribe button. So, Bonnie, tell us a little bit about you and kind of how you became a divorce lawyer, about your life, so that we can kind of get to know you.
Okay. Well, in law school, I thought that I would be a criminal attorney, whether prosecutor or defense attorney. But shortly before law school, I married my husband,
Brian, who was also our CrossFit buddy for years. Yes.
And this was way back in 98, a long time ago. And he had a daughter, or has a daughter. We have a daughter named Alexis. And as law school kind of progressed, I decided that I was actually more interested in family law. So I opened up my own law firm straight out of law school. Which,
get it, girl.
Yeah, well, and it was mostly because I was pregnant and I wanted to make sure that I had control over how much I worked.
Yeah, and your schedule.
Right.
Which is a big deal.
And this is back in the 90s where there was no such thing as a part-time attorney for a law firm. It just was unheard of. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to do it myself. So I started my own law firm. It grew. I took on other attorneys. It was kind of similar. I mean, I listened to your podcast about how you built your firms or your company, but we grew through the years, and I continued to focus primarily, almost exclusively, on family law, and that includes anything related to divorce, adoption, child support, custody, things like that. And now here I am 22 years later, semi-retired from the practice of law.
Okay.
Because I wanted to pursue other things and had gotten to a point in my career where I could, again, pare down, your
how
much I do. Exactly.
Now, the other attorneys that you brought in over the years, are they also family lawyers, or they do different kinds of law?
They are. It's Brianna Noni and Chris Oswald. I will give them a shout out.
Yay.
They are wonderful. They are now my law partners. And Chris handles family law and any probate issues, but Brianna and I are exclusively family law.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So now, are you taking on any new cases? Or are you just using doing old, I don't say old cases, but families you've already worked with?
Return clients or former clients.
Oh, there it is. That's the best way to say it. Yeah.
Mostly, well, I do take new cases, but it's by referral only. That's helped pare down the amount of people who actually come to me. And it's actually, I've been really fortunate that it's remained steady and well within my control. But yeah, so yeah, I take new cases, but it's got to be a good one. It's got to be something that that has enough merit and excitement for me to take generally. Although I'll take some smaller ones. I enjoy helping people.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so how old were you when you opened your law firm right out of law school?
I was 23.
And you had one child. You had a daughter, and you were pregnant with another one.
Yes, I had
23.
My daughter stepdaughter Alexis.
Okay.
I was pregnant with Ethan when I took the bar exam in February of 2001. In fact, I was so pregnant that I had to stand up in the middle of the day or several times because my feet were so swollen.
Oh my gosh.
I passed the bar. I think it was end of March is when you get the results. And I was literally in labor with Ethan, and my phone rang 2 or 3 times with new clients who had been sent to me by some of my wonderful, wonderful friends who were supporting me opening my own firm.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I mean, in this 2001, I mean, this is long before we were talking about maternity and paternity benefits.
Absolutely.
It's long before we were having the conversations of what it means to employ a mother. and how they should be employed just the same as anyone else, regardless. You have kids that need concerns.
Yes.
That need their time, right?
Yes. I was determined, and I wanted to just control my life. I saw what other lawyers were enduring, 80-hour weeks, and, they had no work-life balance, which, by the way, is a huge passion of mine, is to how to balance everything. So I researched it. I interviewed some colleagues, and I worked, practically speaking, I worked in the office Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then I was home Tuesdays and Thursdays. I would pump breast milk, and I was so new that I didn't have enough work to fill up 3 days at first. That didn't last long.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Within about 4 or 5 months, I needed an assistant. Well, I created a playroom because she was a mom as well, and so we would have our kids at the office and whatever. So we were unique at the time.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. Like, we offer free childcare for our staff as well, and especially our coaches that coach at night, right? Because, there's not daycares open at night, and they're working with kids till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And to me, it's common sense.
Yes.
But it's still not common sense everywhere, that people still don't see, like, well, they need to have somebody to watch their kid. Well, this is a human being we're talking about, not a dog.
And it's their child.
Yes.
It's so funny because back then it was kind of a mom thing, and things have changed so much now with the gender roles and the parental roles. But back then it was kind of a mom thing to do. And I had a colleague of mine call, and he's a good friend of mine, and he was an attorney, and he'd had his first baby. And I think Ethan was probably, close to a year old. And I answered the phone, and he was like, "How are you doing this? I cannot be away from him every day." And it was so cool. I was like, well, let me, I gave him some of my practical tips. I was like, this is just what I'm doing, whatever. And so he went part-time. This boy was making bank, but he figured out a way to not be away from his son all day, every day, because he just couldn't stand it. And he'd heard that that's what I was doing.
I love it.
It was cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
You have an influence even on the men.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And so Brian works as well.
Yes.
And Brian's always worked too. So how did you guys manage you having a practice? And then what does he do?
He is a regional manager for Alcon. It is an eye surgical equipment company.
That's it. All right. I was like, I've seen that before. I've seen that brand name before. Okay.
If you've ever had cataract surgery or LASIK, you've probably been on an Alcon machine.
Okay. And so was he traveling a lot?
At the time, he was working from home, traveling here and there, not a whole lot. And then when I decided to go full-time after my daughter was born, I had a daughter 20 months after Ethan was born.
Oh, no big deal. Just 2 infants and toddler.
Right. Well, she was 3 years old, and I decided to go. I'm sorry. So the timeline is wrong. I decided to go full time when he got promoted and got to work from home.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And what I didn't anticipate is that there would be this huge ego hit to me, because I was then the one who was gone all day and he was home. And so I would show up at like a dance class or something, and he would know who my kid was playing with, and I didn't know. I would just remember thinking, he's plugged in and I'm not. Girl, yeah. I reeled it back. I was like, I don't want to be not knowing these things about my kids. So, but yeah, that's how we've balanced it. Is he mostly got to work from home if he wasn't traveling, and then of course, because I can control my own schedule to a large extent, those kids were gold.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And so you've seen it all. As a divorce lawyer, you've seen it all.
Probably.
I feel like at this point, so you've been practicing 22 years?
22 years.
22 years. Wow. So now you've written a book.
Yes.
All right. So tell us, first I'm going to show the people on YouTube. So if you are listening on a podcast streaming platform, we will put the link in the show notes. That way you can go see the beautiful cover and like the quality of the book and like all the things about holding like a brand new book is amazing. But it's called After the Wedding, a divorce lawyer's top 25 tips to keep you married. And so I feel like whenever you go get your wedding license, like your marriage license marriage license, they should be like handing these out. Like, we need state funding for this. I'm sure you think that's a great thing too, right?
Yes.
And so they'll just have to buy them all up, and that would be great. But so all the years, all the things, why now? Why did you decide to write a book?
My 25th wedding anniversary was coming up this year, 2023.
25 tips, 25th year anniversary. Oh, I like it. Okay.
And I wanted to do something. I've kind of had this urge to share what I've learned for several years. And I would start writing something. I would start doing stories about cases that, of course, would keep everyone anonymous, but I just never really followed through. Well, when this was coming up, I was like, I just want to reflect, and I want to share what I've learned, not only through my cases, but also through my marriage. So I started drafting just stream of consciousness things of, I learned this and don't do this, and here are the mistakes that I've noticed. So I counted back 25 days from our anniversary, which was June 6th, and got on Facebook and posted my first tip. And of course, improved upon it, edited it, tried to make it compelling, and just kept doing that. And as the process went on, I would, for example, show up at the gym and people would be like, Bonnie, have you posted your tip today?
Oh, they were following it. Yeah.
Oh,
it was a thing.
Yeah. And I was like, not yet, but I will. And it got to be so cool to watch people be so impacted by it. And then I would have people say, my husband and I read your tips every night, or, we read your latest tip. So the fact that it was these short, really consumable tips, plus I think they're just really interesting to people. They really hit people, became such an exciting thing to me. Well, then I did it, and we did all 25. And I had a friend reach out, Tracy Berry. I thanked her in my prologue, and over Facebook Messenger, and she said, Bonnie, can I use your 25 tips and place them into a book for my son's wedding, and of course give you credit, and then place some pages on the back for people at the wedding to insert their own advice. I was like, first of all, thank you for asking me. Secondly, oh my goodness, I'm using this idea if you're okay with it. And she's like, absolutely. So
what a great collaboration.
I thought, and it was just, and then I was telling people I felt a little proprietary after that. I was like, well, wait a minute. Somebody is using these in a really cool way. And so that needs to be me. And that's what I did. So I put these 25 tips into book, into book form. And on the back of the 25 tips, there are about 60 pages of blank pages for people to do their own marriage journals. Now, by the way, the 25th tip talks about the fact that Brian and I received marriage journals as a gift from my friend Grady Brown, who, hey, Grady, he's one of the most emotionally intelligent people I've ever met, and also has been my friend since kindergarten.
Oh,
so
I love that.
One of our best wedding gifts was these journals. And every year, without fail, and this is the truth, Brian and I journal to each other at the very least on our anniversary. And what do we say to each other? Well, we recount what's gone on this past year. We, talk about maybe some rough times, but mostly we reaffirm how we feel about each other, which is a little squishy, but it's our private thing to each other. And then we exchange them and read through all 25 years of entries.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm not trying to be all, gag, for people, but I will tell you, and this is just the biggest thing, is the intentional part. And anyone who's been married for a very long time, not that 25 years is the longest, obviously, it's long, but anyone.
But it's an achievement, damn.
Well, these days, yeah.
Yes.
But anyone will tell you that in being intentional to each other is probably one of your strongest weapons. So these journals have become and have been just a really cool way to stop, write to each other, and then reading 25 years of what we thought and were doing. I mean, there are some ridiculous entries, some like things that were so important back then that are not now, but it's so fun to kind of reflect on how much we've matured, but also how strong we've been. So
I love that. So Justin and I, we got married in Santorini, Greece, and we hand wrote our vows in these little journals. So we've had 2 wedding anniversaries so far. And so we read the vows to each other out loud. That's what we've done. But I like the journaling component. So I think for next year, we'll add that.
Good.
I
hope people will, even if they don't do it on the back pages of my book.
But you don't have to do it on the first one either. You can start anytime.
Absolutely.
All right. So I want to talk about a couple of the tips that I that stood out to me.
Okay.
And then I'm going to tell you one that I don't agree with because I want to hear what you say.
Okay.
All right. So first, let's see. I want to see what tip number it is. I wrote the tip down. I just didn't write what number it was. Okay. It's number one. Number one. Here we are.
Oh.
If you wouldn't run a business with this person, don't marry them. Oh. So Justin and I run the businesses together.
Okay.
So when we started dating, we did not.
Yeah.
I had hired him as a part-time coach, and we started dating probably the second year he was employed with us. So it wasn't like a right off the bat kind of thing.
Okay.
I was in another relationship, and it wasn't 6 months in, we were working together, and I remember looking at him going, I've never even asked you, like, are you single? Do you have kids? Like, and I ask everyone that in an interview, but I didn't. So it wasn't, our relationship didn't start running a business together, but it has evolved into that, right?
Okay.
All right. So there was a part in here that was really convicting to me. So I'm just going to go with maybe he won't listen to this episode, okay? All right. So it's when you begin seriously dating this person, consider how they run the business side of their life. Do they pay their bills on time? Do they go to work every day? Do they miss a lot? Do they change jobs often? Are their housekeeping skills adequate? Is their space sloppy? Are they saving their money? And I can tell you that I got more than one no in that box for when Justin and I started dating, like 100%. But I'm like, damn, like if I had told my 20-year-old self that, I'm pretty sure I probably wouldn't be on my fourth marriage.
Oh,
like,
wow.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I've never thought about it like that. And that was huge. Now, also I can say that some of those things that used to be no's are now yeses for Justin, right? And probably like for me as well. We all grow, which is cool to see because we've been together for 8 years, but we didn't get married till we were not going to get married. Because
Right.
we were like, we've both been divorced before. We're not going to get married. We're just going to do life together. And we had a kid and, you know.
And it just felt right.
Yes. I know. It felt right. So anyway, so I loved that one. And I wanted to point that one out because I don't think people think about that.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea of love and being married is so fleeting and fickle, and the being in love with the idea is so common and normal. But then when that goes away for a while, or when it's, you know, it fades a little bit, you've got to run a good marriage business together.
Man,
because
and that's what you said. That was like one of the first things, the business of marriage. And I was like, I am a businesswoman, but I have never thought about that.
yeah,
I've never thought about that. Like that is so impactful to me.
I mean, you look at those aspects of people and you have to make an assessment. She's a terrible saver. She doesn't save anything. Is that something that I could be okay with if that never changes? If the answer is yeah, and if it's honestly yes, go for it. If it's like, no, I would be bothered, you've got to really analyze whether or not you're in it forever.
Right. Yeah. So I did a podcast episode that we'll link in the show notes as well on navigating divorce. And one of the things I talked about it. So I talked about it from a place of acknowledging that I'm the only one on the microphone and there's two parties in every marriage.
I
So I
listened
told
to that
it
one.
from, oh, you did listen to it.
I did.
So I told it from my perspective. And I try to be really sensitive of not trying to blame things on people and take accountability. And one of the things that I was so guilty of, and I can still be guilty of this if I don't catch myself, is putting my should on other people. Like he should be good at saving money. That's not my place to put my should on somebody. If that's important, like you said, you need to be able to acknowledge that on the front end, right?
Yes.
And because later, you who am I to should other people? My best friend Danny says, and we just did a co-host mini-series together, that we should take the words should and just out of our vocabulary. Isn't that good?
That would be impossible, but yes,
Yeah,
it's a
think
very
about
good
it. But like, you know, if
ideal.
if you should be really like according to who, what, where, you know? Yeah.
Well, and notice that those concepts are in a lot of ways subjective.
They are so subjective.
So everyone's standards and their tolerances are different. You know, for example, when Brian and I started living together, and of course he had served in the Navy for 4 years, he had a kid, he had been married and divorced. His life maturity was much more than what was further along than mine. And I suggested that we share money. Well, I was so terrible at it. Like, I didn't pay my cell phone bill, and so I would pick it up and they had cut it off because I forgot to pay it. And I didn't care. Then I would just go pay it, get it turned back on. So I was that kind of girl in college. And I suggested that we share money, and he was like, no thanks. And I remember being so impacted. And he wasn't mean or critical. He was just like, nah. And I just wasn't responsible enough for him to trust that Well, I will tell you that changed me. And why? Because he was so important to me. Plus, I knew that I wasn't great at it. I worked to improve to be good enough to share money with him.
Okay, so that's the one I disagree with you on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you brought that up. So, you know, I told you the one I disagree with you on. So that one is number, hold on, I know you don't have these memorized, but you might have them memorized.
I don't, but I know what you're talking about.
Number 11 is share money. So we don't have joint finances.
Okay.
And this was like, and there's not really like there's no reason why. We never tried it because we decided like, okay, we've both been divorced before. We're going to go into this with like the least amount of resistance possible. And like, if you Google like the number one thing married people fight about, it's going to be money. Yes. So we were just like, take it off the table. It doesn't matter. So we just like separate the bills, you know, like I pay the mortgage, he pays the utilities, which at this house is a lot. Like some people are like, well, utilities aren't very much. When you live in a fixer upper, yeah, the utilities are a lot. Like he buys the groceries, I pay if we eat out. Like, so that's what we do. Okay. And like he gets a salary from the company and then I have my money because I own the companies and, you know, so that's just, our retirements are separate. Everything's separate. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and I think I put in there that this will be a controversial one. Right, I don't remember it. Okay. Whatever I added to that was to acknowledge that some people are this will get your hackles up. What do I say?
If this tip triggered indignance, still read to the end. I love that. I love that. But, you know, I mean, I don't know if we'll always stay separate.
Yeah.
But we are for now. It works for now. But I think that's important. Like maybe if he was better at it, would I want to do that? I don't know. I've never thought about that.
And I think the reason that I observe in my divorces, and I won't say it's a huge percentage or whatever, but it's a prominent trait of the marriage that they never combined finances. Everyone had their bills to pay. They would one person would deposit into the spouse's account half of the mortgage every month. Those kind of arrangements where you have your part and you pay to your spouse or you reimburse.
Okay, so I had a spouse like that.
Okay.
I had one and that didn't work well.
Okay.
Like he was like giving me rent every month, like on his part of like that shit did not go well.
Well, and so let me ask you this.
Caused a lot of stress, you know?
Let me ask you why you think it didn't go well.
Well, because I felt like I was his landlord all the time or like his mom. Like I shouldn't have to ask you. You should just be there. Like if it's your responsibility to pay $600 a month or whatever to our joint expenses, then you should do that. Like if it was me, I would never be late on that. I would never want to like put that on to the person I love, right? But he didn't give a shit.
So let me ask you this. Were there other aspects of your relationship that were exactly that dynamic?
Yes. So many of them. So yeah. I see what you mean.
So the sharing of money is, well, how could I say? It's almost symbolic. Doesn't have to literally happen, but the parts of your relationship you have to analyze and or develop are present when you share money. Or you're better at them, or you're maybe more cognizant if you're sharing money because you have to honor each other. Now, it doesn't mean, and again, like I say, there are plenty of marriages that are fine, happy, great, and they've never shared money. They do similarly to what you've described. So understand that it's almost symbolic what I'm saying.
I like it.
Because if you can't share money for a certain reason, really look at why and make sure that's okay. And if it is, great.
Yeah. So there's got to be an element of trust. So like I could say, oh, well, Justin needs to be better at it. And then he's got to be like, but I trust her too. So there's like an element of trust there. Yeah, for sure. Okay. See that. Yeah. I'm not trying to say he's bad at it. I'm just saying like you said, Brian was like, good. Because you weren't really good at it, you know? Like maybe if you guys have that more mutual trust. So, okay. How long was it from then until you guys started sharing money?
I don't remember, but it wasn't years. He might remember better, but it was probably before we got married. We moved in together 9 months in, got married at 2 years-ish, a little over 2 years. So it was before we got married that we were sharing money. And I'll tell you, because you share money, it doesn't mean we didn't have some knockdown dragouts about how the other person was spending money and whether that money should be spent. And there were certain periods where, which I think may just be him and me and just our friendship, I don't know, where I'd be like, well, I'm starting a savings account so that you you can't even tell me what to do. And he was like, I don't care. Fine, do it. So as long as I'm contributing into the joint, and not that, we just don't even monitor that anymore, but we've been together a very long time. And so that savings account that I started, because we had a little argument about it, it has $100 in it. And I've never used it because mostly it just wasn't my habit. But I had to, and he's had to really analyze, am I harming the other person with the way that I'm using money? Am I building our marital estate, or am I constantly degrading it? Mm-hmm. So if you're literally talking about money and wealth and building your estate, this is some serious stuff. You know, you want to be very intentional in that.
Agree. I totally agree with that. That's good. I got something out of that. All right, I agree. I wanted to talk about one more.
Okay.
It is let me find the number again. I should have written the numbers in my notes because I kind of like this one. Number 15, go to bed mad. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Like, that was one thing when we started dating. We said, now it has not always been honored, but it's almost always been honored. Anytime we're in a disagreement, if one of us says, hey, I need a minute, we respect that. Like, we realize we're at this point in a disagreement and we're not going anywhere. Hey, I just need a minute and we're going to talk about this in a little bit,
Yes.
So like I've gone to bed mad before, and I get it. If they die that night, you're going to feel bad. But you probably are going to feel bad anyway because you already got in the argument, right? But like, I do think sometimes putting space between what's happening and, like you said in the book, as long as you come back to it later.
Yes.
You can't just let it lie out there in like no man's land and never be addressed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think inevitably in the relationship, there is one person who, Brian, if you don't go back to it, it got solved by itself.
Oh, I think, is that a man thing?
Oh my
God.
God.
Like it has to be a man thing.
Yeah.
Because Justin's like, you haven't brought that up in 3 weeks. And now you're bringing it up. You're just bringing stuff up from the past. I'm like, because we never resolved it in the moment. And he's like, well, you just shouldn't just be bringing stuff up from past fights. And I'm like, no, like, we still need to talk about this.
Yes.
And there hasn't been another appropriate time or whatever for us to sit down and have this like intentional moment. Maybe it's a man thing.
I will tell you that over the years, Brian has gotten better because of the consequences of not bringing it back up, which is 3 weeks later. Yes, it's going to be talked about. He's gotten better, I will say. And I've gotten better about picking my battles and not always having to, talk it out the whole way, and just understanding that we'll work on this as we go along. So, but you should have space. And that's the other thing. And I don't know if I have this in one of my tips, but you have to learn how to fight. I think I might have heard that on your podcast or someone else's. You have to learn how to fight. Because if you're not fighting, there's something wrong, honestly.
Right.
Or at least if it never happens.
They're like coexisting, basically, like side by side, but there's never that come together.
Exactly.
Agree with that.
When we were dating, our very first fight, he left. And it was, a pretty major fight. And that brought out a lot of childhood baggage for me. He didn't realize how that would have
like kind of triggered.
Oh, yes. And then he had to learn, don't do that unless, just be careful of how you're fighting. And then I had to learn that if he's angry, I'll get nothing productive from him. There will be no progress. So I have to make sure that I give him that space.
Yes. Now, Justin, I tell him all the time, like, he should have been a defense attorney, like, in life. And I feel like I'm a pretty smart, witty person. When this man gets mad, it's like, and I can't even get a word in. Like, he's so quick like that. And so, like, I cannot reason with him in those moments. And I've had to learn that like, we're not going to have anything productive happen right now. So
let's go to bed mad.
Yep. Let's go to bed mad, or we'll talk about it tonight, or, whatever,
yes.
And find some space in that. And usually he honors that. Sometimes he doesn't, but none of us are perfect, right?
Yes.
But so when our first major fight, I left too. And it was my house. Like, I owned a home when we started dating that he later moved into. And so I left him at my house. Like, I was that mad. It was my house. And I remember the conversation. I have no idea what the fight was about. But my takeaway was he was like, you can't do that. You can't flee. That's a bad habit.
Ooh, I was like, smart.
That is a bad habit.
Yeah. Yeah. Leave with the understanding that I need space. I'll be back.
Oh no, I was just pissed.
The kindness. Yeah, but
I was just mad. Like taking a bag, I'm gone for the night. Like, and like, but then I realized that was a habit. I had done that before in previous relationships.
Yeah.
But so that was my takeaway clearly wasn't, who knows what we were arguing about, right?
Right.
But it was that moment of, oh my gosh, like I can't just leave when it gets bad. But like in my family growing up, like we didn't always talk things out. We just kind of ignored them.
Right.
Like it was just more like, there wasn't a lot of like conflict resolution. That's not, in a personal relationship, that's not my like best skill set.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was more like, just don't, everything's gonna be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be okay. It's gonna be fine. Versus like actually dealing with it. Now in business, no problem. But I had to learn that about myself.
Yeah.
You know, for sure.
That's important. Well, and as I talk to people getting divorces, imagine being married to me, which number one, lawyer, but number two, dealing with divorces all day. There have been times where I've come home and I've been like, we need to talk about the latest spate of divorces I'm getting. I don't want this to happen to us. And so Brian carries a lot and he's just been wonderful about, number one, tolerating the way I argue because it's like a lawyer. And I try not to do that to him, but it's
who you are, probably.
It is. It's how my mind works. I'll have a heading and subsections and I'll address, and he honestly does really well under the circumstances. But then when it's not an argument, and he's been really receptive, as he should, because it's important. We need to take what I'm learning and learn from it. These are cautionary tales. One example I give people is I was getting 3 or 4 divorces where these people had been married for 21, 22 years, and consistently there wasn't a whole lot wrong. No, there was no adultery, no this or that. Consistently, they were saying...
Like the 3 A's that you talk about: adultery, addiction, and abuse.
Yeah, those are 3 things that this book does not purport to address.
Right, correct. I love that you put that in there, too.
Thank you.
That was great.
So these people were coming in and they'd say, we haven't really liked each other for about 5 or 6 years. Well, guess what went on 5 and 6 years ago? Kids were...
So the kids left? Empty nesters? Or?
They had just left before they came to my office, but kids were teenagers, in sports, maybe behavioral problems, For about 5 or 6 years, the couple had stopped focusing on each other because they were just parents. And so you've got these 2 otherwise really good people that loved each other, still love each other, but let it die. Mm. And so I remember just being like, okay, we've got to really be careful about that, because anyone who has teenagers knows that they can be pretty consuming. You think toddlers are consuming. You just wait until they're...
a whole different way, yeah.
Yeah, and then especially if they're active. And so anyway, so I came home and I was like, and Brian and I maybe had been married. I don't remember how long we'd been married, but I was like, I want to make sure that we are cognizant of that. And that's just one example of the way that what I've learned from my clients in my cases has been a true benefit and a blessing to me. So, and that's why I did the book and the tips. I was like, I've got a lot to share. I want to share this because I believe in marriage. And It's funny, you'll talk to a lot of divorce lawyers who, they will kill your soul about marriage. Oh. And I just, and like anything else, that's their perspective. But I believe in it. I don't think it's completely necessary. I don't care if people are, it's a completely personal choice. But if you're married, I believe in really working on it, and that it's not an outdated institution.
Correct.
A lot of divorce lawyers will tell you it's just not necessary anymore, and da-da-da-da. I think that it has a lot of great things, and I want people to succeed.
Yeah, I love that. So first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm so excited to read through these tips with Justin, like to have these conversations with him. Good. Because no matter where you're at in life, like we have a small child, he's in activities, he's in kindergarten, like we're running multiple businesses. Like at any point you're lying if you say that you haven't found yourself at, like, I say at fault, but in a more of a weakness in these different areas, whether it's not having sex enough, or whether it's not traveling together, or not pursuing an activity together, or separate activities. It's a recent conversation that we have, because I'm a big believer in, like, even with our staff, I employ the whole human. Like if I'm hiring somebody, like I'm not hiring you just to be a teacher. Like I'm hiring you as a teacher who has anxiety, who has a mom that they're caregiving for at home with a 3-year-old, And she, and you also enjoy art and you love to go to the park with your kids. Like
That's
you're
wonderful.
hiring the whole human. And I think that's so relevant in marriage as well. And so that's one of the things I'd say harped on Justin lately of is like, you're not doing any hobbies. Like you're just working and dadding. Like you've got to have some fun, and he doesn't want to hear it from me right now. Right. But like this is his first year in the president role in 2 of our operating companies. And so he's working really hard at that. And I'm very proud of him. But like, I'm like, go play disc golf, like go do something fun. Like, because I know he needs that because I see as the whole human. But so the funny story, I'm going to tell you the story and then we're going to do trivia in the trenches.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a trivia question. And then I want to talk a little bit of the how of the book too, because I'm writing a book right now.
Okay.
And so I just like personally want to know, and I know a lot of our listeners will love to hear this too. So I was in Tennessee this week and you dropped the book off on my porch. And I knew you did. And I was so excited to look at it when I got back. So that night I'm out at dinner at a cocktail party and I get a picture of the book from Justin and he's like, is there something you need to tell me?
Actually, yes, 25 things that I'm about to tell you.
I was like, oh my gosh. I literally started hysterically laughing out loud at this cocktail party because I'm like, Bonnie's my podcast guest on Friday. But it was so funny because he's like a divorce lawyer. Oh my God, what's happening here? Yeah, I know. So anyway, I'm in Tennessee, so that was the funny part. All right, so trivia in the trenches. So I'm going to ask you a random question, and I secretly get pleasure in people not knowing the answer, but it's not a super hard one, but it is kind of funny. Okay, here we go. Globophobia is the fear of what?
Oh my gosh. I'm wondering if it's an acronym. Globo.
Nope.
Okay. Thanks for the hint. A glow ball.
That's what I thought too. It's balloons.
Oh yeah.
Right? Globo, like Globo, balloons. And apparently Oprah has globophobia, a fear of balloons. Like, so I want to go Google now, like Oprah and balloons and see if there's like any pictures of her with balloons because I can't like think of any off the top of my head.
Okay. My mother, I don't know if phobia seems dramatic, but when balloons are around, I mean, if you pop one or you squeak one.
It's the popping.
Maybe that's globo.
I have to leave the room. Yeah. Like we have a big event at the event center every year where our kids kind of like a recital. And we always have balloon arches or towers or all the things. And at the end, like I have to leave the room because it's so, it makes my spine curl. Like I guess people that like nails on a chalkboard or whatever, people don't like the sounds of things. For me, it's the popping of the balloons. It's just so forceful.
Maybe that's part of that phobia. I have no idea.
I don't know. I'll have to research that one just a little bit more. So there's your trivia in the trenches. And I'm secretly glad you didn't get it.
I feel smarter.
Yeah. Oh, you do? Good.
Yes.
They're usually so random. Okay. So the book. All right. So the how is kind of what I want to. So you told us like where the ideas came from, 25th anniversary. The tips are amazing. But how did you go from that concept and your conversation with Tracy? And now we have a book. Like it's like a published book. Right. You're a published author. Did you can you see that? Like you got to put that coat on. And, like,
I guess.
You're a published author. So how did you publish this? How did you choose the cover, the photography, like all of that? Tell us how that happened.
Okay, I will disclaim this, or I have this caveat that I still don't know a whole lot about this industry, or some of this I just am not going to be a great source for. But
that's the best part, though, is like brand new people that would want to write a book, maybe, right, or just interested in the process. Like you got to start somewhere.
Yes, and my first conversation was with Robert Hertzfeld, who published his own book, Judge Robert Hertzfeld in Southern County. And I went to him and I said, okay, how did you do it? So obviously I went to someone that I knew had published a book, and his book is Super POTUS. He'll be proud that I.
Super POTUS.
Yes, which is, President of the United States.
Yeah.
So, and it's a hero, I think, based on Obama or whatever. It's a superhero.
It's fiction?
It is,
fiction?
I think.
Or loosely fiction, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, so I went to him because I knew he had done it, and he gave me advice to do self-publishing.
Okay.
Which, and so I started Googling,
so
researching.
I've learned there's self-publishing, then there's like hiring a publishing house, and then there's a hybrid model in the middle.
Okay.
That I've learned about as well.
Now, if the hybrid is full service self-publishing, then that is what I did. And the difference there is that I have a team of consultants and editors and optimizers, that is a word in the publishing realm, I guess, who took for example, my biography and my description of the book, and they optimized what I said about them. So basically, I did the best I could to write those two things, and what you see in the book was improved upon. It was my writing, but oh my gosh, they made it so smooth and professional sounding. So you've got people who help you with all of the peripheral stuff, not the manuscript itself. And then they are the ones who presented options for the cover to me.
Oh,
so
I love that.
I can take no credit for, except choosing one, you know, for finding what I think was just a beautiful.
Oh my gosh, the photography is beautiful. So you guys that are listening online, be sure you go to the Amazon link so you can see it. But it's like, if I was going to go on the beach and get married somewhere, this is exactly what it would look like. It's got like the frame and the flowers and the lanterns, and then the back is just water.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the colors and what you do is fill out a question. So I did a full service self-publishing, which means you pay money. You pay them money to help you with this process.
Full service self-publishing. Okay,
yes.
I'm going to have to look into this more.
And I'll give them a plug. It's Book Baby.
Book Baby.
BOOKBABY.
Yeah,
strange name,
Book
but
Baby.
They kept coming up.
But it's your baby. Like when you write a book, this is like your soul.
Yeah. Well, and they kept coming up in my Google research on self-publishing, and I thought, well, you know, they seem reputable. So I reached out. I had a consultation over the phone and was thoroughly impressed with the process and the knowledge that this guy had, and so I went ahead and engaged them. And they do all of these things, and you fill out a questionnaire about what is your vision and, you know, who's your target audience. And they then present things to you to either approve or disapprove. And from there, you just do this it's all online, obviously. It's all remote. And piece by piece, they put it together for you.
Yeah.
Then you do a final proof and editing. There's one typo that Brian found in the book, and I'm so sorry about that. I won't tell you what it is. Maybe you guys won't see it, but which I was so mad about.
You know what? You'll have it. What is it? Edition 2. You'll have another edition that'll come out. It'll be fine, right?
That's right.
Even the best books I've found typos in before, like even like Harry Potter books. I've seen typos
good. Good to know.
To everybody.
Well, and so for what I paid, I get my personal stash to either do book signings or, you know, whatever I want to do.
Drop on the porch of your favorite
them on
friends,
the porch,
and then their husband's scared to death that I've hired the best divorce attorney around, and yeah,
and I can order more if I need them, but they're print on demand if you order them online, and so you get them relatively quickly.
So Amazon, and then where else can they order?
Book Baby, it's bookshop.com, and I'm sorry, we'll share the link.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes for sure.
They, I think, print them now and send them, whereas Amazon, and I don't want to get this wrong, but they wait to see what kind of traffic you're getting on your book before they'll order an inventory. And that's why when you guys see it, it says it's in pre-sale. That's why Amazon does that. And it makes sense because there are millions of books on there.
Right.
And so their release date is January 16th of 24. So if you order now, they'll ship it that day. But they basically wait to see what the demand is and how the algorithm is going to place my book. So either place is fine to order them. But I found that interesting. There's so many layers to it. With the self-publishing, you have complete control over the way that your book looks and the price, which I say you have control. I will tell you that I had a minimum that I had to set the book at.
And then you get a little bit of wiggle room. But if you hired like a publisher,
they have all the control.
Okay, but so now this is if you buy this book, if I buy this book online, you're getting paid for that.
Yes.
Right? You're getting a check from Amazon or Book Baby, I'm guessing.
Book Baby. It'll
they
come
go
through
Book Baby. Okay,
yeah.
So when you signed up with them as the full service self-publishing, they're handling the payment stream as well.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So then they're just taking like a small cut. Yeah. Is that what they would do? Maybe something like that?
They take their production costs, obviously, because they've got to print the book.
Because they're printing. They're paying for the printing, and then you're getting the profit. Whereas if you were working with a publisher, you would be getting way less.
I can tell you that the profit margin is shockingly low no matter what, but it is double with a self-publisher than it would be with a regular
traditional
publisher. And the other thing with the traditional publisher is they have to want your book.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, just like my law practice, I'm not waiting for someone to want it. I'm creating it.
I like that.
So,
Yeah, I know.
Self-publishing was perfect.
Entrepreneurs right here. That's what we do.
right.
We create something that wasn't there before.
Exactly. And since I didn't know the first thing about how to do this full service thing was just worth every penny.
I love this. So I've worked on my book outline and I've started writing the first chapter. But, I am, I get, even though I'm not even close to being done, I get like stuck in the details of like, how's this going to happen and how's it actually going to become a book and all that. So I love that you've, and we'll put the Book Baby URL also in the show notes. People will be able to go to there too. Okay. So what else are you doing in life right now? You said you were semi-retired.
Yes.
So are you guys still CrossFitting?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're still CrossFitting. And what else do you guys do? Or what do you do? Outside of Brian, because that is a tip in the book, is to have your own activities as well.
Independent of Brian, I own a lot of rental properties.
Okay.
In fact, that was part of my exit strategy from the practice of law. There had to be something else, some income stream, something else to take up my time. I rent mostly to travel nurses, which is so fun.
I bet.
These are the best tenants, and it's just really fun to help them come into town, work their 13 weeks, and then leave. And I pride myself on real comfort for them. So it's kind of a project. And what I love about doing that is that there's no fighting. There's no litigating. There's no gross stuff that people are doing to their kids or whatever. So it's my reprieve. It has been my reprieve from the practice of law and the things that I deal with there. So I spend a good amount of time working with and doing things on my rentals. And then my most favorite projects are the non-income producing, which is animal welfare stuff. And I don't say rescue because I'm not literally rescuing, but we've got some things in the works, like building dog houses and donating them. And which, by the way,
love that.
I've been so delighted by like my whole family coming over on Sundays, and we're building dog houses. I built one all by myself, by the way.
Yay. Yeah. Like the saw, the wood, everything, like nail gun, you got it.
Mm-hmm. Every tool. I put my little glasses on and I sawed everything. So
something about doing stuff with your hands.
Yeah.
It's just like a whole different, and you've spent your career not doing stuff with your hands in that way.
Yep.
So like you said, it's a great reprieve.
And
so I'm like a kitty cat rescue girl, like big cats though.
Oh.
So I'm a big supporter of Turpentine Creek Wildlife Refuge in Eureka Springs.
Yes.
And so like I have that animal welfare, but rescue, like so near and dear to my heart, because people don't know that it's really unsafe to have big cats in your house because somebody needs ambulance or they need firemen or somebody like first responders come into your home to save grandma and they walk in and there's a Siberian tiger sitting there. Hello, not safe. And so in America, there's more big cats in American homes than there is in the wild in Asia and Africa. And so it's really sad. So anyway, I'm with you though. Like I'm not rescuing them in my home, right?
Yeah.
But I like support those efforts and it's really important to me. And that it fulfills me in a whole different way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just my way of, well, I love animals so much more than I love humans anyway, but it's
especially after all the years that as a divorce attorney. Okay, so wait, what are you doing with the dog houses once you guys build them?
Well, it's called Chloe's Promise. That is based on my old elderly rescue dog that is the best dog that anyone will ever own or have.
I love that.
And it's kind of crazy, but we find literally sometimes I drive around, but we also get calls for dogs that are tied to trees or tied up and no shelter. So I'm going to go ahead and tell this. I will go to those houses and I text Brian the address and he knows where I am and when I'm leaving.
That way if you get missing, we're not going to leave you as a cold case.
So I don't want to be a Dateline episode.
Yes, no doubt.
And I will approach the owner and just introduce myself and say something that helps them understand that, I see my latest one is a dog was tied to the porch, no shelter, nothing. And so he came out and I said, I have an extra dog house. I don't suppose you could use it. And of course, with the exception of maybe one or two, they always say, well, sure. And people might say, well, those people are assholes but I approach it in this non-judgmental way, mostly because what I've discovered is it is true ignorance. And I don't mean like, you ignorant ass.
No, they just don't know that that's not safe.
Yeah, and they just don't perceive their dog as a pet. They perceive their dog as some sort of who knows how they got the dog. So and then I ask if I can come back and maybe walk him and da-da-da. So over the course of some time, my goal is for them to see their dog in a different way. Doesn't always work. Sometimes they just take the doghouse and, in the straw.
At least they have a doghouse.
Heck yes, because I can't stand, and you guys know, you see people all the time who think that tying a dog out in your yard and letting it just rot is somehow, anyway, it blows my mind, but we work with people like that, trying to at least help this dog have some shelter.
Trying to infuse a little education in there too.
Absolutely. And most of the time it works.
Love that.
Because people are generally good.
People are generally good. And sometimes they just know what they know.
Yes.
And they don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
And if that was not something that was perceived as necessary in their life growing up.
Exactly.
Or maybe they didn't have a pet and now their cousin's in jail and their cousins left the dog there.
That's exactly right. The stories I hear about why this has happened, and this guy that I had approached, so as he and I are talking, he was affectionate to the dog, which was good to see. I looked at the indications. I look in his front window, and there are 4 children under the age of 6. And literally his wife or baby's mother is holding probably a 2-week-old baby.
Newborn.
And so I thought, that's, his life. I mean, I don't know anything about the situation, but he has 4 kids that he's trying to take care of. And that really took any judgment out of it. We can all easily say, well, you just shouldn't own a dog. But it just, I don't know, that does no good to have that emotion. That's not going to help that dog. And for me to be mean to these people or ostracize or whatever, for me not to try to work with them, that's not going to help the dog either.
I love that so much. That makes me so happy.
It's one of my favorite projects. Now, I will say it's been on hold for 2 or 3 months while we've been doing some other things, but I love it.
I love that. It's called Chloe's
Promise.
Chloe's Promise.
I have designs to make that into a nonprofit at some point, but girl, that'll be a while.
Yeah, I've been there. Got one of those too. So,
okay, well, I'll be coming to you for some advice.
Got one of those too. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about on the show today?
No, not that I can think of.
Thank you so much for being a guest. I feel enlightened, and I'm so excited to share with people about your book.
Brooke, thank you for letting me do this. Yes. It has been wonderful.
It's been so fun. Until next time.
Ta-da. Thanks for listening to The Grit Crusade. I'm Brooke Plack. Join me again next week on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. This podcast is produced by ClintonCreative.com.